revenue sharing. So moving on, agenda item number 6, or any other old business announcements that need to come before the board from members. If not, moving on, agenda item number 6, CPRA implementation update, Mr. Haas.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. Good to be here with you today. I'll give you my usual implementation update, but I wanted to address one thing before I jump into that, related to the diversion program. So many of you may have heard in the news recently that there's been a lot of activity in coastal Mississippi related to concerns associated with diversions in Louisiana. The Gulf Coast Resource Coalition has been presenting in Hancock County and Bay St. Louis, to name a couple, related to potential impacts of diversions, and there have been resolutions passed in those areas opposing diversions in Louisiana. So want to address that here this morning. I guess the first thing I would say is that as it relates to this most unusual year that we've had, we've talked about this ad nauseum related to the Bonnet-Carré diversion. In the extreme high water year that we've had this year, I just want to say that we share Mississippi's concerns. Obviously, the citizens in southeast Louisiana were impacted by that flood control structure and the amount of fresh water coming out of it, similarly to the citizens in the state of Mississippi. And that's evidenced, of course, by the fact that our governor has requested the declaration of a fisheries disaster, which was done by NOAA here recently, and also in requesting the Corps of Engineers through Section 7001 of WERDA take a fresh look essentially at managing floodwaters on the lower Mississippi River. So again, just to reiterate, we share the same concerns as it relates to the flood control on the lower Mississippi River and the Bonnet-Carré spillway opening, and sort of the trend it looks like that it's taking in terms of being open more and more in recent past. But there is some concern on our end, I guess, that there's been some confusion between the Bonnet-Carré spillway and its operation and opening and the proposed diversion at Mid-Breton Sound. So we're talking about two different locations, we're talking about two different purposes, two different operational schemes, and the two seem to have been lumped together, at least in the discussion in coastal Mississippi. So that's a little troubling on our end. I think that there's also been some misconceptions as it relates to where we are in the process in terms of the Mid-Breton diversion. We've heard discussions about it, flipping the switch and turning on in the next, week, next month. We've heard that it's 3 to 10 times even, actually heard that in coastal Mississippi, the size of the Bonnet-Carré, and the two things they're not similar in that way. Obviously, again, different locations, different purposes, different operating schemes, and there are just a lot of differences associated there. Another thing we've heard is that Mississippi hasn't had a seat at the table, and I want to assure you that they have. Mississippi's been a part of our master planning team since at least 2010. They've been aware of our plans, all of our plans, our projects associated in the master plan, since that time. So they have had a seat at the table. We actually visited coastal Mississippi last week and had discussions with their director of the marine resources there to discuss some of these issues, and likely we'll have more outreach in the near future. And then I guess the last thing I would mention is that, in a typical year, and certainly I guess there's no such thing as typical, right? But it has been our understanding, and in fact, Mississippi has actually requested that more fresh water be allowed to be released so that it could freshen Mississippi Sound, essentially. And many of you may have recalled during the times of the LCA or the MRGO ecosystem restoration study that Mississippi was actually advocating for diversion at Violet, and actually using Bonnet-Carré more to try to, again, introduce more fresh water into that area, primarily to support oyster production. So those are several of the points I just wanted to raise with you here today. I just want you to know that we are tracking the issue. We're aware of it. We are coordinating with leadership in Mississippi as it relates to our plans. We've assured them, obviously, that we're very early in the process as it relates to Mid-Breton. Many of the concerns that they have there are similar to concerns that we have here, and are concerns that will be addressed through the planning, environmental impact statement process, and so forth. So I will leave it at that and jump into the more typical implementation update. So we continue a record year in terms of projects that we have in construction.